to current affairs analysis. So today is 3rd December 2018 and we'll be discussing the articles that is appeared in today's newspaper. So let's get into the analysis. So the first one is the disability in India. So let's analyze why this has appeared in the newspaper. So this is because an article called "Disability is not a defining feature" has been appeared in today's newspaper, and this article is primarily focusing on the new movie that is to be released in the Bollywood. So the article also discusses some of the stigmas that is associated with the Bollywood in portraying this disabled people, and the newly released movie called Zero, and which portrays the life of two disabled persons. And apart from that, the disability is not the defining feature of one's personality or one's ability. So based on this article, this topic becomes relevant for the UPSC examination. So let's get into the details. So the topic comes under the GS paper 2, which is the welfare scheme for the vulnerable sections of the population by the center and the state, and also the issue relating to development and management of the social sector services relating to health, education and human resources. And further, along with this topic, you should also be covering these topics, that is Mental Health Care Bill 2016, and Person with a Disability Equal Opportunities Protection and Right of Full Participation Act 1995, and also the National Trust for Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation and Multiple Disability Act 1999. So these are the different acts passed by the government to protect the disabled persons and their rights. And further, you should also be focusing on these topics, that is causes of the growing mental illness in India. So the different factors which is contributing for this increasing or the rising mental illness in India includes the air pollution and the accidents, etc. And further, the facts like technology, public policy, private sector involvement, etc. to address the issues and challenges faced by the disabled. And further, for the GS paper also, you should address the ethical aspects of the issue. Now, let's analyze who is a disabled person. So in India, a person with locomotor disability or a person with low vision, blindness, leprosy, mental illness, mental retardation and hearing impairment has been described as a disabled person under various laws that is enacted by the parliament. And further, let's analyze some of the challenges that is faced by this disabled people. So India is having 40 to 80 million persons with disability, but the low literacy and few jobs and widespread social stigma are making this disabled person among the most excluded in India. And if you are taking the analysis and the data from the different sources, it shows that they are the most excluded and disabled person than the SC or ST communities. And further, their inability to perform their physical acts makes them economically also weaker. Then let's come to the next point. The children with a disability are less likely to be in schools, and the disabled adults are more likely to be unemployed. And the families with disabled members are often worse than the average. This makes them educationally and economically a backward section. Further, in the years to come, the number of disabled people in India is expected to rise as sharply as this age-related disabilities, especially the old age and the different factors like pollution and the mental stress, etc. is contributing towards the increase in this age-related disabilities, and that is grow, and the traffic accident, etc. is going to increase the number of the disabled people in the upcoming years. So that's also a challenge faced by India, and it makes that we should be having a comprehensive policy towards addressing the issues and the rights of the disabled people. Now let's analyze some of the facts associated with disability in India. So as said, India is having 40 to 80 million of the disabled people, and at least 1 in 12 household has a member with disability. Further, the literacy, unemployment and the poverty among the disabled is high compared to any other section. Then children with a disability are 5 times more likely to be out of school than the average. So in order to attain the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, we should be having a comprehensive policy to bring these disabled persons into the schools. And further, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka have adopted many good practices in order to make the public and the private institutions and the services accessible by the disabled person. So also this low literacy and employment rates are widespread social stigma, and that making this disabled people among the most excluded in the society. Also, if there comes any essay on this topic, that is disability, then you can quote this word of the Rabindranath Tagore, which states that the problem is not how to wipe out the differences, but how to unite with the differences intact. So this is given by Rabindranath Tagore. Now, let's analyze some of the socio-economic profile of the persons with disability. That is, a large number of children with a disability remains out of school, and there are 4 to 5 times less likely to be in school than the SC and ST children. So, which means they are most disadvantaged than these two sections, which is considered and is protected under the constitution as vulnerable and weaker section in India. And if they do stay in the schools, they are rarely progress beyond the primary levels. So this leads to lower employment and income. And there is a need for a more accurate data collection. Then harmonizing a definition of the disability in government surveys and the census would be a good beginning. So if we are having a good data, then only we can make good policies and the targeted delivery of the services for the disabled persons. Now let's analyze some of the particular challenges that they are facing. So first, take the attitude. So this negative attitude held by the families of the disabled are often the disabled themselves. So the families and the disabled themselves have a negative attitude towards their life. So this deters the disabled person from taking an active part in the family, community, and in the workforce. So this is a force which is pulling them back from constructively engaging in the society. And further, those suffering from this mental illness or mental retardation faces the worst stigma and are subject to several social exclusion also. And further, the people with a disability are considered ineligible to marry those without disability unless adjusted with high dowry, and this become a more concerning factor in case of women. Then the disabled girls are usually married to older men, then leading to a higher incidence of the widowhood. Then showcasing the success stories of the people with a disability can challenge these deep-rooted negative perceptions. So all this arising out of the negative social perception towards this disabled people, and the society is having a negative perception that they cannot perform their task independently. Now let's discuss the challenges particular to the health. Then a large number of disability in India are preventable even if they are birth related disabilities, and including those arising from the medical issues during birth, maternal conditions, malnutrition, as well as accidents and injuries. So if we are providing a right healthcare facility and an affordable and timely healthcare services, then we can prevent this disabilities. Then, however, the health sector is yet to react more proactively to disability, especially in rural areas, because of the inaccessibility into this healthcare facilities. Then there is a stark regional disparities that is existing between the states, between the regions in India. In general, the states that lack in health services also lack in caring for the disabled. And further, those disabled from the birth, women and SCST or this weaker section are less likely to seek health care because of their social backwardness, economic backwardness, etc. Then, despite years of the public intervention, only a few disabled people have access to aid and appliances. So, this aids and appliances can make them perform their task or their physical activities better, that help them to overcome their disabilities. Now let's analyze the topic particular to the education. So what are the challenges that they are facing with respect to education? While the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan has made a concerned effort to promote the inclusion of children with special needs the system faces the challenges in identifying these children and responding to their needs. So here comes a comprehensive survey or data collection that has to be carried out in order to collect the data regarding those children's and responding to their needs. And only around 1% of the funds under the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan are spent on inclusive education, and the budget for educating children are mild to moderate disabilities. In regular schools, setting has not increased commensurately since the focus of the inclusive education began in 1970s. So even though this inclusive education has become a part of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan or the education system from 1970s onwards, it has not focused commensurately on including this disabled persons or bringing them under this education coverage. And moving forward, the coordination between the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Social Justice and Empowerment, then the Rehabilitation Council of India, etc. are needed to bring more people under this or more children under this education. Then the general teacher training system need to be improved. The statewide strategies on education for children with special needs to be devised to address the regional disparities and the regional challenges faced by the children's. Now, let's analyze some of the challenges that they are facing particular to this employment. Even though many disabled adults are capable of productive work, disabled adults are far lower employment rate than the general population. So, both the public and the private sector is showing some kinds of discrimination towards them. Then, in fact, the employment of the people with disability actually fell from the 43% in 1991 to 38% in 2002, which means in 2002 approximately 62% of the population in the disabled section is unemployed. So this is despite the country has witnessed a strong economic growth during this period, which means that the economic growth has become a disadvantage or has become a challenge for them, had a negative impact on this disabled persons. Then in the public sector, despite 3% reservation since 2003, only 10% of the posts have been identified as suitable for this disabled sections. So this 3% reservation is only valid for this suitable or the 10% post which can accommodate them. And furthermore, the quota policy is also covered just 3 types of disabilities, that is locomotive, hearing and the visual. There are other sections of the people like mentally retarded and other kinds of physical or the other kinds of disabilities which are being kept or has been deprived of this education opportunities. Then the situation is far worse in the private sector, because as they are focusing mainly on the profit generation, they are less interested in employing this disabled persons as it can impact their working efficiency. So this negative social stigma is existing in the private sector, so they are reluctant in employing more disabled person in their companies. So in late 1990s, the employment of the people with a disability among large private firms was only 0.3% of their workforce, and among these multinational companies it was far less, and it is around 0.05% only. Then the financial assistance too has hardly reached this needed section. The National Handicapped Finance and Development Corporation dispersed assistance to less than 20,000 disabled person between this 1997 and 2002. So in 5 years, only 20,000 people has been advantaged from this fund disbursed from the National Handicapped Finance and Development Corporation. Now let's analyze some topics or the challenges that is concerning particularly to this policies and the institutions. So here we will be focusing on the accessibility to the public institutions, private institutions, etc., and some of the policies of the government and the public sector alike. So despite having one of the most progressive policy framework for person with a disability, India falls short of an implementation. So it is not because of this lack of policy, it is because of the lack or the stringent measures in its implementation that is holding India back from providing a right livelihood or a right opportunity for this disabled person living with us. Then the Person with a Disability Act 1995 is the cornerstone of India's policy framework, but its enforcement faces many challenges. Then the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the nodal agency for disability, is perennially short of resources. So this financial constraints makes the ministry in constructively engaging and implementing the policies which is particularly targeting this disabled person. And moving forward, there is therefore a need to strengthen this public private partnership with NGOs in order to cover this disabled person and provide them the right needs. Then there are concerns about the weak monitoring mechanisms and accountability of the public funds. Because of this, corruption and the untargeted delivery of the services that is reaching to those people who are not in need of this, which leads to exclusion of the most needed section. Then the person with a disability need to be treated more like active participants than clients. So whenever a disabled person is coming, we will be treating them like a client and we will be showing them sympathy. So we are not to show them sympathy, but more we should incorporate them and consider them as the active participants of the society and provide them their social space in order to constructively engage in the social development. And there is thus an urgent need for the reform at all levels, that is from society, economy, institutions, policy implementation, etc. Now let's analyze the last topic, that is access. So here the physical accessibility in buildings, transportation and like, as well as access to service is the key for the persons with disability. Further, the guidelines already exist for buildings that are friendly for both disabled and the elderly. So this guidelines has been not followed by many of the construction, multinational institutions, etc. And further, these guidelines need to be adopted into building bylaws to make them largely binding. So which means at present these laws are not binding. Because of this, those constructing these buildings are not taking them with right seriousness. Now let's analyze some of the way forward. So India has a growing disability rights movement and one of the most progressive policy framework in the developing world. But a lot more need to be done in the implementation and getting the basic rights. And the newer thinking and the better coordination of programs is called for in this regard. Then preventive health programs need to be deepened and all children screened at young ages in order to prevent them from any of the disabilities that is arising from the malnutrition or the overnutrition. So with this we are coming to the conclusion. So further, let's analyze two more points. That is, people with a disability need to be better integrated into the society by overcoming stigma. Disabled adults need to be empowered with employable skills and the private sector need to be encouraged to employ them in the job. Then the scale of disability in India need to be better understood by improving the measurement of the disability. So with this we are coming to the conclusion of the discussion on this topic, disability in India, and let's discuss the next topic in the next section. Let's discuss the next topic. So the next topic includes communicable disease management or the data management with respect to this communicable disease. So let's get into the analysis. So here the news has been appeared in the Hindu newspaper, that is sharing outbreak data, and we will be conducting the discussion based on this news that is being published in the Hindu newspaper. So why this is news is because there is recently a Zika outbreak in the state of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and this has been reported from more than 150 people. So this has become a concerning fact because the Zika cannot be identified so easily, which leads to spread of this diseases into more number of people even before they are diagnosed. So this comes under the GS paper 2, that is government policies and intervention for development of various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. So along with this, you should also be focusing on the following topics, that is Zika virus and its outbreak in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, and the following current affairs related topics. Then the Nipah virus outbreak in Kerala, then the neglected tropical disease, then communicable disease and measures to be taken to address them. So these topics should also be covered under this along with this news analysis. Now let's analyze the importance of the health data management to address the communicable diseases. So both daily cases accounts the genetic sequence of the viruses circulating in India can be extremely useful to the epidemiologists studying the Zika virus outbreak. And the daily cases counts can show how quickly the virus is being spreading in the society. And further, the genetic sequence can also help to understand from where the virus has came to India and for how long it has been circulating in Rajasthan and LP before it was dictated. So if we can find out how long this has been circulating in the society or in the states, we can also find, or we can make an analysis how much of the people would have been infected because of this Zika virus. And further, using the data from the previous epidemics, scientists have been able to estimate the rate at which this Zika virus mutates, so which makes them a challenge for the healthcare management because it undergoes frequent mutations. So by comparing the genome sequences from the multiple patients, they can estimate when this virus is diverged from their most recent common ancestors, giving an idea of when the virus entered India. And further, if this data is much earlier than the date of the first detected case, that is September in the Rajasthan, then that would mean that a large number of the patients were infected even before the detection of this case, which in turn could help to customize our outbreak responses. So in order to having a comprehensive healthcare management system and to formulate a right outbreak response, we need to have the health data management and to address this communicable and this diseases like Zika. Then, given how important such data are during the epidemics, the World Health Organization has released a policy statement in 2016 which states that the pathogen genome sequences are made publicly available as rapidly as possible through the relevant database. So, if that is being available in the public, which can help the local primary healthcare centers up to the super specialty hospitals to take the right measures in order to address this health issue or the health challenge. And also it creates an awareness in the public domain, and the society will be vigilant about this outbreak of the epidemics. And in West Asia, when there is the Ebola outbreak in the 2013 and the 2015 Zika outbreak in the Latin America, the outbreak showed how useful such proactive data sharing can be. So with this proactive data sharing measures, this two outbreaks has been addressed and is contained with immediate effect. Now let's analyze some of the concerns with respect to the health data management. So the recent Zika outbreak in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh are a reminder of how poor Indian authorities are at sharing the healthcare data. So there has been not taken this issue seriously and has not published it in the public domain. So neither this Rajasthan nor the Madhya Pradesh has published the day-wise number of the confirmed infections. And further, even though the Indian Medical Council has genetically sequenced the Zika virus from 5 patients in Rajasthan. It hasn't published this sequence in any open access database such as GeneBank. Now let's analyze some of the way forward. That is, publishing this epidemic data on the open access platform can help the countries to tackle the outbreak better. Now let's analyze the practice question for the day. So it is important to ensure a proper data management and monitoring during the outbreak of diseases like Zika and Ebola. So in this regard, discuss how publishing epidemic data on open access platform can help countries to tackle the outbreak better. So here you should be addressing this publishing of this data in open platform by two way. First one, it is with regard to the healthcare workers at the different levels and public. So if the public and awareness is created in the public domain, it also helps in containing the outbreak better. And if there is a proper data available for the healthcare workers, then that also helps them to take rightful measures in order to contain and to diagnose and to recommend them to the respective test in order to detect the diseases. And in cases if such an public data is not available, the healthcare workers will consider the flu and other kinds of symptoms as a general diseases that is arising from any other flu or any other diseases. But if this public data is available and awareness is created in the society, then the healthcare workers will be vigilant, and in cases if any of the symptoms is appearing, then they will recommend the patient for some of the test and the diagnose, and which will lead to early detection of this diseases, and this can rightfully impact, or it can rightfully help to tackle this outbreak better. So with this point you can frame a good answer along with some of the suggestive measures. Now let's discuss the agrarian distress in India with respect to the current affairs discussion. So let's get into the analysis. So this news has been appeared in the Hindu newspaper, that is job creation at the farmer's doorstep. So along with this topic, you should also be covering topics like Ritu Bandhu scheme, which is being released in the Telangana state, and the climate smart agriculture, then major crops and the cropping patterns, etc., in order to cover this topic comprehensively. So we have already covered this topics of the climate smart agriculture and the major crop and the cropping patterns in our GS classes, which is available in the Bro platform. So those who have subscribed for this can get the details of this climate smart agriculture and the major cropping system along with this video in the Bro platform. So let's analyze why the topics has appeared in the newspaper. So in recently, the Telangana government has announced the Ritu Bandhu scheme and has spotlighted the policy of the utilized cash transfer to assist land owning farmers with non-agricultural income. So the government has been strongly pushing for the doubling of the income of the farmers. So in order to doubling this income of the farmers, we should be focusing on the other activities. So this article also addresses some of those other activities which we should be focusing in order to increase the income. So here also the article is specifically focusing on this non-agricultural income, how this can be increased or can be effectively utilized in order to sustain or to support the life of the farmers and in order to increase their income. Now the topics comes under the GS paper 3, which states under the subtopic major crops, cropping patterns in various parts of the country, different types of irrigation and irrigation system storage, transport and marketing of the agricultural produce, and issues related to constraints, e-technology in the aid of farmers. Now let's analyze some of the facts about the agrarian distress in India. So this rural India's economic situation continue to be worsened because of their dependence on the various factors like monsoon for the irrigation and the water availability, the high price in the fertilizer, then the low minimum support prices, etc. And furthermore, the repeating calamities like the cyclones, drought, flood, etc. is also causing a widespread disaster or the distress into the farmer. And a recent survey by the National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, that is NABARD, the survey is titled as All India Rural Financial Inclusion Survey. So you can remember this survey, which is released by the NABARD, and it shows that the average monthly income of the rural household is 8,000 approximately, and with agricultural households deriving only 43% of their income from the agriculture. So only 43% of the annual income of the agricultural farm or the farmers or this family is coming from the agricultural sector, which means more than 50% of their income is coming from non-agricultural activities. So if we want to secure a good life for the farmers, we should be also focusing on this large share of the income that is coming to the agriculture or the agrarian families. Now further, most of it is from providing the daily wage labors at and the government jobs. Now, let's analyze some of the concerns with the government schemes in order to increase the income of the farmers or to address their distress. So, the government has sought to double the farmers of the income by raising the minimum support price. But such initiatives would apply directly only to this 48% of the rural India and those who are engaged or those income that they are deriving from the agriculture, and with non-agricultural households being left behind. So perhaps we need to look at the alternative sources of the income. So the article states two such alternative ways of increasing the income of the Indian agricultural sector. The first one is the increasing the income through the agricultural allied activities, and which primarily focuses on the cattle rearing, and further protecting and addressing the issues that is faces in the non-agricultural sector. So we have already stated that a large share, that is 50% plus of the income, is coming from the non-agricultural sector for the farmers, and they are engaged in the daily works, construction works, etc. So if those problems which they are facing in this daily works and the construction work can be rightly addressed, then a improvement in their daily wage can be witnessed. Now let's analyze increasing the income through the agriculture and the allied activities. So with respect to this, the article discusses that the conversion of the rising farmers' income need to embrace the non-farm diversification. That is an important pathway for empowering the landless laborers and the marginal farmers. So even the landless farmers will be benefited out of this scheme, which at present are being left out from many of the government schemes. And further, the livestock sector can offer a significant opportunities for bolstering the non-farm income. So it can support the an additional, or it can provide an additional income to the agricultural sector. And further, the cow dung and the other kinds of the bio waste that is deriving from this livestock rearing can be utilized for the agriculture as the fertilizer, etc. So it will become a mutual beneficial. And further, the current breeding policy that is based on the exotic blood and the artificial insemination need to be revamped, and a national breeding policy is also needed to upgrade the best performing indigenous breeds. So if the farmers can be assisted or can be provided with the best indigenous breed, then it can increase their productivity and which can increase their income. And for that, the government, both at the state and the central level, should take the rightful steps, policy measures, etc. And further, the state government should be encouraged to participate in the national breeding policy implementation, creating an environment for the competition among the alternative suppliers of the artificial insemination. Then this geographical information system based analysis must be utilized to map production systems. So involving this technologies can address the some of the challenges that at present we are facing with respect to the data collection and the data analysis. And further, the animal health care should become a priority with greater investment in the preventive health care. So those diseases which is affecting the cattle leads to death of such cattle, which creates a huge financial loss for the farmers. So if that can be addressed, then it will be a support to their non or the allied agricultural income. Now the state government should sponsor the research and assessment of the market along with the highlighting the investment potentials. So here the state government has to play the major and the constructive proactive role with respect to this increasing or providing a rightful environment for highlighting the investment potential. And with respect to the private investment must also be encouraged, and for that a rightful ecosystem has to be constructed. Then the government need to create better incentive structure for investment in livestock in the state that are lagging while harmonizing the rules, regulation and regulating authorities across the state. So now further analyze addressing the issues of the farmers. They are employed in the constructive sector. So this is a non-agricultural income that is the farmers deriving. So they are deriving this from the construction sector. So here the agricultural laborers routinely seek construction related daily wage labor to bolster their income, and for this they are migrating into the urban and the peri-urban areas and to the industrial cities in order to seek this construction and other skilled workforce or the manual works. Then improving the conditions of the migrant workers in the construction sector requires a multi-pronged approach starting from the center, state, private sector, society or the civil society, etc. So a concerned effort from all those factors or all the stakeholders can only improve the conditions of the migrant workers in the construction sector. And moving forward, first we have to enable migrant workers to get deserved access to various government, that is central as well as state government schemes, despite the lack of identity proof. As they are migrant workers, this identity proof become an important tool in order to access the state level services. So this has to be addressed, especially in the case of interstate migration. And for this, we should also enact a national migration policy. So we have already discussed this topic and made a comprehensive analysis of this topic in the earlier current affairs section classes. So you can watch and get the details of this importance of this policy and the challenges with respect to implementation and the way forward, etc. And moving forward, away to the and access to these Anganwadi facilities. This is particularly for the women workers who has been migrating from the rural areas into the urban areas. So this access to Anganwadi facilities should be provided regardless of their identity documents. So when they are migrating from these rural areas into the urban areas, as they lack this identity proof, it is not only impacting the women but also the children, because their access to the Anganwadi facilities is being prevented or is being lost because of their lack of this identity proof. And moving forward, while multiple laws exist for the welfare of the construction workers, compliance is abysmal, so which needs a proper implementation and a rightful compliance redressal mechanism. Then the penalties for the non-compliances have to be increased to a significant fraction of the construction cost payable by the builder, and there should be a right mechanism to ensure that the compliances or this policy measures has been implemented rightfully. Then the registration of workers with the welfare board should be made mandatory and be the responsibility of the constructor and the builder. Moving away, if the constructor is found to engage or employ any worker without a registration card or ID, the penalties, that is monetary as well as non-monetary, which means the imprisonment, should be imposed, and which would then be used for improving the awareness and the penetration of registration cards and their benefit. And addressing the issues, there should be a registration card and that should be linked to their Jan Dhan account, and the transfer of payments on the periodic basis is made directly to their account. And in order to improve the conditions of the woman, the strict anti-harassment laws should be implemented. We know that this anti-harassment law has become a news since the Vishaka guidelines that is being issued by the Supreme Court. Moving forward, this creche facility that is for the babies at the construction site should be provided to also ensure that the children are not neglected. We know that the creche facility is available in some of the private as well as the public sector where their employs 50 or more employees. So in cases, those sectors are supposed to provide this crusher facility, but that is not applicable with this construction sites. So this crutcher facility should also be provided in the construction sites so that the children, we can ensure that the children are not neglected. They often play with this gravels, dust, etc. in this construction sites, which can threaten their health. And this utilization of the construction cess has to be improved if we are to make any differences to the lives of our construction workers. And the workers should also be provided with training, skilling, etc. in their area of interest, as it would lead to higher earnings and the credit worthiness. You know that the debt trap is one of the challenge which is being faced by the rural farmers. So we should be having a policy to address this debt trap. So if we can rightfully engage them and we can focus on this non-agricultural income which can support their daily income, which can provide them an alternative income, and this can be utilized in order to address this credit worthiness or the debt trap. So by this their credit worthiness can be improved. Now let's analyze the way forward. So our policies should help create sustainable long-term rural non-farm employment option which can aid the rural people in overcoming barriers to the economic prosperity. And further, the Indian rural development policies should increasingly focus on the developing markets, then infrastructure and institutions that can help the sectors such as livestock and the construction growth. And while India's post-independence, the rural policy has primarily been about driving people away from this agriculture and towards the cities. So now we have to make a relook into these policies, and we must now incentivize the jobs creation at their doorsteps so that we can address this migration and we can improve their income. With this, we are coming to the conclusion on the discussion of this topic. So here is the practice question for your mains. That is, in order to increase the income of the farmers, we need to focus on non-farming sector and the allied sectors alike. Common. So here you can express all your points as the direction word given here is the common. So you can specifically address the issues of the allied sector and the non-farming sector and the importance, etc. And with that you can make a balanced or a well thought out conclusion. So with this we are coming to the end of the current affairs discussion. For getting the notes and the daily current affairs PDF and the detailed notes, you can register to the website.